Hi, my name's Holly. I'm a computer science tutor and I run Teach All About It. Today I'm going to show you how to answer a iGCSE computer science paper question based on flowcharts. Now this is a specimen paper for 2023, so it is something which should be something you could expect to come up in this year's exams. Now you can see down here that we've already got a draw a flowchart and then we've got some bullet points. So you can see that they're actually using one of our computational thinking terms. Here is decomposition. Decomposition is a computational thinking term which simply means breaking things down into smaller, more manageable chunks. And here you can see we've got an algorithm which needs to allow numbers to be input, ignore any numbers that are negative, count how many numbers are positive, and then finally output the count of positive numbers when 0 is input and end the algorithm. Now initially that might sound like quite a lot, but because they've broken it down we can use this like a to-do list. So let's start with one of the main shapes that we need. So when you're drawing a flowchart, we start with a start. And this is a terminator. So all of our terminators, start and end, they will all go in either a rounded rectangle or an oval. Now we need to allow numbers to be input. Now this suggests that we're going to draw a flowchart that ignores the numbers, counts how many numbers are positive, so it's more than one, and outputs the count of positive numbers. So it looks like we are going to allow a certain number of numbers because we output the count of positive numbers when 0 is input and then end the algorithm. So we're going to need two things here. We're going to have to get our input. So let's create a num. And I'm going to initially give it the value of -1. Now the reason I'm not going to give this a 0 to start off with is because 0 should end the algorithm. Now because that's something that the computer does, it's a process. So we're going to pop it in a box and we need to add a line there. So any flowchart needs to show the flow of your logic. So therefore, we're going to have our arrows actually showing the flow. The next thing we want to know is we want to count how many numbers are positive. So we're going to have a counter. Now you could call this posnum, count nums. I'm going to call this count underscore pos. So this is a meaningful name. I am counting the positive numbers, and because it's a counter, 0. There initially are 0 positive numbers until I find one. There's another line, and that's another thing the computer is going to do. Now we're not totaling off anything, but we do need to allow numbers to be input. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with our num takes the value of the user's input. Now this is an input output. It's not something that the computer is doing. So therefore I'm going to pop this into our parallelogram. Now I'm going to kind of over egg this a little bit. It's going to be really obvious it's a parallelogram, and then there we go, line down. I've taken a number and now it's an input. Now it does say to ignore any numbers that are negative, so I've done that one, and I'm now going to ask the question, is it negative? If it's not, we want to add 1 to the count. So is num less than 0? Now if we want to make it really obvious, add a question mark. It's a question. Now if I'm asking a question, afterwards I have to make a decision. So therefore it is a decision which needs to go into a diamond. There we go. I'm going to pop a line down from there, leaving just enough space for me to loop back round. Now this is going to have two options. I'm going to have one going this way, one going this way. I'm not quite sure where they're going to go yet, so I'm just going to have yes this way, no this way, but don't forget to label them. So ignore any numbers, so that negative is going to bypass whatever happens here, and then count how many numbers are positive. So if it is not less than 0, then count pos needs to go up by 1. Now I'm going to put an equals, and I'm just going to wrap this round. So count underscore pos plus 1. I'm going to go up by 1. So let's draw that. Ooh. There. And make sure you add the arrow so you know that you're following it in this direction. Right, ignore numbers. Count how many numbers are positive. Yes. Output the count of positive numbers when 0 is input and end the algorithm. Okay, so we need to also have a question of, is num exactly 0? Is num equal to 0? Now the reason I've used a single equals rather than an equals equals, which is what you might be familiar with if you're doing something like Python, is because we use the left pointing arrow to assign a value. So a left pointing arrow like this, and you'll see this also in pseudocode, means takes the value of. And then a single equals in this case means is the same as. So is num the same as 0? So does num have the value of 0? So at this point, if num is less than 0, actually we can ignore that. So we don't need to ask at that point, because if it is less than 0, it can't be 0. However, if we have found what would technically be a positive number, we could go up like this. Now, this is where you need to maybe make a decision in terms of maths, because computer scientists will count 0 as a positive number. So in this case, we could assume that 0 is positive. However, if we're taking a maths perspective, 0 is neither positive nor negative. Now, that would mean that we have a decision to make here. Now, if you're going to follow this in a mathematical way, we probably want to ask the question, is it 0 first? And then, if it's not, so let's do that. Let's take the mathematical perspective rather than the computer science perspective. So the reason why computer scientists will consider 0 as positive is because you have to have a Boolean value. Now, Boolean values in this case are true or false. So you can't have a positive, negative, and something that's ambiguous in between. Whereas in maths, you can. So let's put this here. Is num equal to 0? Question. And then we can have this one. So if it is, then we're going to end. But we also want to output the counterpositive numbers. So we're going to output our count of positive numbers really, really obvious here. And then we're going to end. Now notice here I have changed my algorithm as I've gone through, as I've thought about the logic. So one of the things that you might want to do is make sure that you ask for some paper. So again, I'm going to make a decision there to actually change this slightly. So you could use a pencil, but make sure that you go over it in pen afterwards. Or you could use a scrap piece of paper, and that scrap piece of paper could then create a draft which you then draw out nice and neatly for the final exam. So is num equal to 0? Yes. Output count positive and end. Okay, so we've done that one. Otherwise, we're going to have our count underscore pos takes the value of itself plus 1. That's something that the computer can do. So therefore it's a process. So this one here, you can see I'm drawing elbow connectors rather than wavy lines. The straighter you can make your lines, the easier it is to follow. So let's put a no. So it's not less 0, but it's not equal to 0. So therefore we're going to go up by 1. Okay, ignore numbers that are positive, and then we just take the next number. So I'm going to create a loop here. There's your loop. So is number less than 0? If it's negative, we just input the next one. And then when we count up by 1, we also follow this line along. So this allows us to input numbers. This allows us to ignore numbers that are negative. So if it's less than 0, we're just going to ignore it and go around in an infinite loop. We are counting how many numbers are positive, and this positive is taking a mathematical version of positive rather than the true or false that we have in computer science. And then finally, if it finds the number 0, then we're going to end the algorithm. I'm going to be doing a lot more of these videos over the next few weeks going up to the exam. If you'd like to join me again, please do join me either live or recorded on our YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time. If you found this video helpful, please do click the subscribe button, and don't forget you also need to click that bell so that you get notified every time I pop up a new video and help you with some revision. Take care.